Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and welcome to our virtual presentation. Our group, which is Group 1, will be presenting under the topic of Impact of Secularism and Secularization to Muslim World. Let's begin our presentation. Before we move to the introduction part, let me introduce myself. I am Siti Nur Aisyah binti Syahuzai with matrix number 2118598. To have the comprehensive understanding regarding the discussed topic, it is better if we have the basic understanding of the structure on what is secularism and what is secularization. First, what is secularism? The origins of secularism were invented in the year of 1851 by George Jacob Holyoake. He began to use the word secularist to describe himself and also his followers. He defined secularism as a code of duty pertaining to this life, founded on considerations purely human. Secularism worldview lies under the non-religious worldview, which is called as the philosophical worldview. Secularism is a principle that mainly involves three fundamentals. Firstly, the separation of religion from all state of mechanisms. Second, religious freedom or liberty. And lastly, the people of different religion and belief are equal before the law. The intention of the secularism as the new arising fundamental after the Feast of Dark Era is to separate science from religion. By separating religion from the state, it protects every person's freedom to choose what to believe or what not to believe within the eyes of the law. Second, what is secularization? Secularization is a process of replacing religious influence with worldly influence in the society. During the process of secularization, institutions throughout society, economy, political, and social are removed from the control of the religion. In the Christian religion, it is the priest and also the church. As for us, the Muslim, it is the mosque and also the Sharia perspective. Secularization can be understood as the social process which rationality is gradually incorporated in religious, customary, or traditional practices. In other words, that the behavior of public life has a practical use, not as a religious one. There are few main elements of secularization, such as lack of religiousness, rationality, and the process of differentiation. The next part. Even though we already know what is secularism and what is secularization, because both of them are closely related, but there are significant distinctions between both of them, because they don't always have the same views on the place of religion in society. A system or ideology known as secularism is based on the idea that there should be an area of knowledge, values, and also action that is free from the influence of religion. However, secularism does not preclude religion from playing a part in politics and other spheres of public life. It is a process that does result in exclusion. However, for the second element, which is secularism, it can be summarized as a political philosophy advocating the separation of religion and state. And also secularization is the process whereby religious thinking, practice, institution lost their significance of the social. So what I can conclude, both of them do have the difference between the idea of secularism and idea of secularization, even though both of them are from the same ideology.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Liana Peter with the metric number of 2014278, and I will be discussing the impacts of secularism on culture as well as religion. So, one of the most significant impacts of secularism is on culture. And as a result of this secularization, activities of daily lives within societies have been altered over time. To start off, The impacts of secularism on culture is strongly related to media and social media. Since we are currently in the 21st century, there is no doubt that social media has become a powerful tool to change and influence the minds of individuals and societies. So, the more people keep up with social media, the more their views, opinions, and beliefs will be affected. And the reason for this is mainly because the information that is spread across social media is done by people that are not sensitive to religion or religious at all. As a result of this, the ideals and values that are circulated through media and social media are not exactly moral in the eyes of culture and religion. In this era, people are exposed to various types of Western values, lifestyle, and fashion which do not include any kind of religious values or teachings in their culture. For example, we can see it in the way they dress. Many female Western artists tend to show a lot of skin when they are performing or promoting their music. Another example is in Western TV programs. They contain content such as unethical entertainment, violence, and also sex scenes. This is highly bad for new generations, especially because it is shown on TV and throughout social media. It seems like a norm and it seems permissible, when actually it is not, as it outright ignores the religious and spiritual aspects of one's life. Other activities promoted by the ideology of secularism through media and how it affects culture include homosexuality, adultery, as well as abortion. In this new generation, there have been numerous advocates for abortion and homosexuality, and it all stems from the Western culture, which other cultures are incorporating into their own. Many of these advocates can be seen promoting their ideas and values on social media such as Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And a result of this is it has significant impacts on the concept of marriage. Committing acts such as adultery, according to secularists, is considered permissible. However, it could lead to the decline of lineage, the increase of certain diseases, and it could also lead to other issues such as abortion. All these issues lead to the impact of secularism on religion, as these actions are considered immoral and not permissible from the perspective of religion. This is because it goes against the teachings and practices of religion. For example, the ethical issue of abortion is not just forbidden and against the law from the perspective of culture, but in religion as well, such as in Islam, Christianity, and other religions consider abortion to be forbidden. In Islam, abortion is forbidden as it first causes the threat of harm to mothers, second, termination of pregnancy after the ensoulment is considered murder, and third, the presence of fetal abnormality are incompatible with life. So, in conclusion, secularism causes great impacts on religion. Why? Because it minimizes the importance of religion and it excludes God's guidance completely in the daily lives of people. And people are free to engage in wrongdoings, and immoral acts keep increasing from day to day.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Aisyah binti Muhammad Hanifi, metric number 2112506, and for my part, I'll be explaining about the impacts of secularism on education. So as we all know, secularism is the separation of religion from the state. So it has impacted education in a way that it separates knowledge from any religious and divine sources. In traditionalist philosophy, this process is referred to as the desacralization of knowledge. Desacralization means the process of rendering anything less sacred. So in this context, it refers to secularization, in which knowledge is being separated from any divine sources. So according to Nasser in his book titled Knowledge and the Sacred, he mentioned that knowledge has become desacralized, especially among those segments of the human race which have been transformed by the process of modernization. So, as a result of modernization, knowledge is rejected. Knowledge rejects divine revelations and the idea of spiritual and metaphysical foundations of knowledge. So secularism has been rising, especially in the Western world, which means that religious teachings in the social and political systems are being replaced with man-made legislations. And this perception that views religion as impractical and full of contradictions was due to the historical brutality possessed by the church against scientists and philosophers. So, as we all know, during the Middle Ages, the church was the most powerful political figure. It had the ability to influence every aspect of society, and thus everyone feared the church, and they follow whatever they say. So, and whoever holds an idea contradicting its teachings was subjected to severe punishments, such as executions. So, scientific ideas which are developed through observations and empirical evidence contradict the church's teachings, ideas, and beliefs concerning God and metaphysics. So, this threatens the church officials and their influential power as people started to believe and support such ideas. An example of a conflict between science and the church was the trial of Galileo. Galileo was an astronomer, and he was summoned by the church office to face charges for his theory that the earth rotates around the sun, which the Catholic Church considered heretical because the church doctrine held that the earth was the center of the universe. So this event demonstrates the difference in the sets of values believed by scientific and religious epistemology, which is the reason behind the conflict. So as a result of such events, the emphasis on religious notions and teachings has decreased to the point where the community has rejected them, and hence why secularism is now on the rise. So how has secularism impacted education, especially for us Muslims? Although modern technologies and scientific revolutions has advanced over the years because of secularism, it also poses a threat to religious beliefs and its teachings. This is because education is an essential tool in discovering oneself and shaping one's worldview. So we acquire knowledge through means of knowledge and experiences. Everything that we see will be formulated as information in our minds. This then shapes our worldview, or how we perceive and understand life and the world around us, and ultimately through education we can shape our own belief and value systems. And for us Muslims, this is in accordance to what is being taught in Islam. So secularism poses a threat to Islam and its teachings, as it heavily relies on the scientific methods as the source of acquiring knowledge. It views that only scientific knowledge can provide an accurate description of reality and truth. It rejects any other forms and sources of knowledge, such as the divine revelation and philosophical and religious knowledge. So because knowledge shapes one's perspective and belief system, conforming to secularism would affect a Muslim's belief and value systems. For Muslims, our belief system revolves around the concept of Tawheed, which is believing in the oneness of Allah, and Taqwa, which is the feeling of fear towards Allah. So attaining education for us is an act of worship that have to be guided by revelation in order to understand the reality of nature and the limitations of human beings, as we believe that everything is under Allah's control and command. On the other hand, the non-Muslims believe in scientific and man-made laws that view the creations as a self-operated system, and that they do not need religion to support their belief. So therefore, conforming to secularism as a Muslim would result negatively in one's faith and taqwa. That is all from me. Thank you.
Impact of secularism on economic riba as a pillar of economic strength. They put riba in the banks that operate and force people to accept it. Fighting for the value of power to build a system of equality. The system then means the right to seek property for those who can. Instead, a person's property is distributed to the public without the effort of the receiving group. Fighting for the right economic freedom without limitation. As a result, the rich become richer and the poor can continue to get poorer. Forms of the economic systems, namely the capitalist and socialist economic system that only aim at wealth and material without thinking about halal, haram, social justice, service, and community welfare.
Moving on to the impact of secularism in social life. The most significant threat to modernity faced by the Muslim is secularism. The concept is the liberation of man from theological and philosophical ideals and the exclusion of religion from life's practical applications. So, secularism's impacts are widespread and universal in their intensity, extent, and ability to be felt in people's minds, which consequently affects the social life of a person. So, what is social life? So, social life can be interpreted in many ways, which could be the activities with other people for pleasure or when you are not working. But nowadays, social life is created closely to the role of media and like the internet and social medias, which has played important role in everyone's life. So there will be negative effects, right? So the negative effects on Muslim and other religious communities are mostly caused by the fact that they are governed by individuals who are insensitive to religion and who introduce a variety of values that are wholly at odds with the religious teachings. So the modern Western clothing and lifestyles have been introduced to a new generation in many different kinds of ways. Their text-rooted religious principles and doctrines have simply lost all of its meaning. Now, TV shows are quite bad for developing a person's excellent character because they feature so many violent, sexy, and unethical entertainments. So, this will have an impact on young people's thoughts as well. This system consistently disregard the spiritual and the religious aspects of life. So, when this happens, the public's opinions and thoughts can be cultivated through the media. So it is quite simple to cast something in people's thoughts by repeatedly broadcasting it in the various ways, which is in TVs, in social medias. Yeah, it will be constantly being spread. So the same applies to social medias. So without any checks and balances, you can spread whatever you want wherever you are. Utilizing it can be highly successful, but in our society, it also changing in a similar way. So we should be aware that religion in the media does not simply reflect religious realities outside of the media. So the significance of religion and beliefs are also disputed as a result of this outcome or complicated system of events. So when this happens, the influence of secularism is substantially destroying moral principle in young people. People are free to commit wrongdoing because it downplays the significance of religion and largely excludes God's guidance from man's daily concerns. So as a result, immoral deeds continue to rise every day. In my opinion, all major world religions offer their followers a moral code and a wonderful means to live a peaceful existence. Therefore, secularism should not be there.
Slide, which is what is the impact of secularism from the aspect of politics? Political secularism is a claim that religious authority should not control political authority in the sphere of government, law, and also citizenship. This understanding of secularism does not give automatic priority to religious freedom, conscience, toleration, and democracy. The function of political secularism that has been endorsed by secularism is to prevent at least different kinds of problems. The positions that are important in politics if they have the position of the concept of secularism in their mind, then they will be tried to get the position greedily. It will be made without morals, without self-respect, and also with injustice. As a consequence, there are people will try to get it by any means until the goal justify the means, specifically through the illegal means such as giving bribes, uh, giving fraud, having the fraud types of contract, lies to the people, and coercion. This is one of the impurities that occurs in political with a worldview concept, which is they having the secularism thinking because they separate the religious guidance that have a vision of the afterlife.
Impact of secularization in Muslim world, the empiric of Western colonialism on Islamic countries has introduced the concept of secularism in the Islamic world. Due to inadequate knowledge of the Islamic community, this understanding is simple to enter. Therefore, without a sufficient understanding of Islamic science, one can only understand religion from the outside. In the 20th century, modern education tied to the nation-state became widespread throughout the population. Religion subject and education become a subject alongside many others and as such lost their sanctity. They will differentiate between the subject of mathematics and science with the religion content. Previously in the hands of ulama, the Sharia law was well preserved. After secularization, the law was slowly derived and adapted from the European models. Music and song become intention in Muslim society. They use many ways to promote and spread entertainment in Muslim life until become part of sociability. Furthermore, advertising is the main way for people to know more about entertainment.
So the conclusion is Islam is not compatible with the idea of secularism, despite the numerous attempts to reconcile with them. Because we cannot compromise with secular ways and institutions as it will lead to a dilution of Islam in all fields of activity. Muslims should have a full consciousness of their traditions, values, and beliefs in order to free themselves from the dangerous infiltration of secular and other influences. So they do not need to look for secularism as inspiration for progress and development since Islam itself endorses progress and development with certain limits lah. So Islam also enjoins the use of reason. However, it is considered secondary to divine guidance. Unlike secularism, which gives no importance to divine guidance. Instead, it only emphasizes on human reason and self-interest as supreme values. So secularism is completely unfit for Muslim life because it denounces the objective of Islam, that is to purify the soul as well as to reform society. In fact, in the Quran provides many verses that emphasize the relationship of religion with state and society. Unlike Christianity, which has defined for the church a certain domain that of the salvation of the soul, Islam legislates matters of state and social relations. So it leaves human reason and experience to lay down specific institutions, theories, and laws for the Islamic State within its determined philosophy, ideals, criteria, and also objective. Although the Quran does not directly ordain a state for Muslim and does not mention in detail a constitution for an Islamic state, it does not mean that there is no relationship between religion and state. So in no way can Islam be separated from state or the spiritual affairs from the worldly affairs. Hence, it is different from Christianity, which is a purely spiritual religion that enjoins rendering unto Caesar, which is Caesar's, and unto good what, and also with God, what is God. So, therefore, secularism is incompatible with the Islamic worldview since it separates between the two. Since it's separate between the two, which is the spiritual and the mundane. Secularism is only compatible with the Western concept of God, which maintains that after God had created the world, He left it to look after itself. This concept is inherited from the Greek philosophy, especially that from Aristotle, who argued that God neither controls nor knows anything about this world. He leaves people to look after their own affairs. But in the Muslim perspective, we believe that Allah is the creator of the universe, the owner and controller of it. Therefore, His jurisdiction should not be confined to personal matters only. Thank you.